Hi guys, today we're going to go over how to distribute and how to simplify expressions. This should be a review. We're going to bring back in our integer rules that we've been working on throughout the year. There's going to be a couple questions with fractions to practice what you were doing last week. And this is all in preparation for getting ready for Wednesday when we'll be live together and we are going to work on simplifying expressions specifically with fractions. So please make sure you watch this video. You can pause it and do the questions together as we go through them. There's a bunch of problems. So if you need to move through them, that's fine. If you have things you need to rewatch, that's okay too. Please also make sure you're reaching out if you need help, and make sure you watch till the end so you can know what the assignment is and any other updates, okay? So what we're going to work on today is distributing and simplifying expressions. So when we think about what that means, okay, we need to remember the distributive property. We've worked on that before, and we're going to talk today about combining like terms, okay? So just as a quick review, all right, for when we are dealing with integers, all right, we've worked on this all year. When you're adding integers, there's a plus sign in between some problems, 5 plus -7, okay? What we can do is there's a plus sign so we can follow the adding rules. Do they have the same sign? Well, that's a +7 and that's or +5, that's a -7. So they do not have the same sign. So what that means then is these are different signs. If it's different signs, it says to subtract. Okay, 7 minus 5 is 2. Keep the sign of the bigger number. The 7 is bigger, so my answer here would be -2. Okay, subtracting integers, if I have -5 minus 9, okay, there's a minus sign in the middle, so I know I am subtracting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the first number, and I want to change this into an addition problem. So I change the subtraction to an addition, and I change the last number to its opposite, which would be -9. This now can follow the adding rules. -5 and -9 have the same sign, so I can add those together, so we end up with -14. Okay? And then going back to integer rules, where for multiplying and dividing, we know that when we are multiplying and dividing, we can use Mr. Multiple Division here. We can also think of it in another way. Pairs of negatives make a positive. If a negative doesn't have a buddy, then it is negative and all by itself. Okay, so keep those in mind today as we work on simplifying expressions. So the first thing we need to do here is be able to break these up into terms. So when we did this in class, a strategy we used was chunking. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this up into terms. So it says 2x, and I'm going to draw a line to chunk it. Plus 3y, chunk. Minus 6x, chunk. Plus 7, chunk. Plus 9y, chunk. Plus 4x, okay? So when I look at this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different chunks or terms, okay? So what we need to do now is we need to think about that we're trying to put the terms that go together. So which ones are alike? So when I look at this, I see a 2x, right? And that's not going to match a 3y because it's not the same variable, but a -6x, that's going to match. Not a +7, not a 9y, but also a 4x. Those would match, okay? The +3y matches the +9y. And the +7 is called a constant. It doesn't have a match in this case, but it can. So what we would do then is we're going to rearrange the expression to put the things that are alike together. So we're going to start a little simpler here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to chunk this. So if you want to pause this and try this on your own, you can, or you can work through this example and then try the next one on your own. 3x minus 18 plus 9x. 3x chunk minus 18 chunk plus 9x. Okay, great. Now what we can do is we can look at this and say, okay, I know 3x is going to go with the 9 plus 9x. Those are like terms. They have the same variable. So I'm going to rewrite them so that they are together. I'm going to rewrite that chunk, 3x. So I've got that done. Plus 9x, I'm going to rewrite that chunk. And then this guy here doesn't have a friend, but we can put him on at the end there. So this now says 3x plus 9x is going to give me 12x minus 18. And I can't combine anything else here because those are not like terms. So that's a simplified expression. Okay? You go ahead and pause this here and you can try this problem here. So the first thing you should have done is chunked it. Okay? So that we're putting it right before the plus or minus sign. That 5 is going to go with the +3. The 18w goes with the 10w. Typically, you write this with the variables first. So 18 and 10W go first. That 5 is a positive, right? Because there's no symbol in front of it, and the 3 is there. This is going to create 28W plus 8. We can't add those together because they're not like terms, so we're done. Now let's introduce some negatives here to this, okay? Make this a little more complicated. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine, or we're going to chunk this first. So there's a chunk, and there's a chunk. And now what we're going to see is these two chunks are actually right beside each other, which is quite handy. So this is negative 15K plus 9K plus 2 minus 14. Those are also like terms, and they're going to go beside each other there. So we didn't actually need to rewrite this, but what we need to recognize is that this problem here is basically negative 15 plus 9, okay? If we follow our integer rules, all right, that we talked about at the beginning, all right, we know that when we're adding, okay, we need to decide, does it have the same signs or different signs? So looking at this, negative 15 plus 9, negative and a positive, they are different signs, so we're going to subtract. 15 minus 9 is 6, but the 15 is bigger, so it's negative. So it's negative 6K, right? Now we're going to come over here and take care of this problem. This says 2 minus 14. I know to do 2 minus 14, I'm going to keep, change, and change to turn it into an addition problem. So I make that 14 a negative. Now looking at those, again, those are different signs, so I'm going to subtract. 14 minus 2 is 12, but that 14 is bigger, so it's a negative there, okay? So this is the answer to my expression, right? That is the simplified expression. Okay, so looking at this question here, okay, you go ahead and try this. You can pause the video, right? Unpause it or play it when you're ready to go. So you should chunk this. Put your chunks together that match 4m and negative 7m plus 8 minus 13. This says 4 minus 7. 4 minus 7, I know I can keep, change, change to get negative 3m. 8 minus 13. Keep, change, change, or add the opposite is the better way to say that. Okay, 8 plus negative 13 is going to be a negative 5. Okay, this all goes back to integers. If integers were a struggle for you, okay, this is something you're going to continue to need to work on. Your 8th grade teachers are going to expect you to be able to do this. Now, this question here looks crazy, and I am aware of that, okay? So we're going to do a couple examples with something like this. This is not necessarily an expectation today, but this is to start to understand this. So we're going to chunk this like normal, okay? It's not really any scarier, okay? We're going to put our chunks together that match. I'm looking for my matching variables. So I've got 1/4 x plus 2/3 x plus 9/5 plus 7/10. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is we want to put together our like terms, but if we're adding, we have to think about what we know about fractions. To add fractions together, you need a common denominator. 4 and 3, okay, are both going to go into 12. So I'm going to turn these both into 12s. I can keep my x's with them. Okay. I multiplied this by 4, so my numerator goes by 4. This is really the same thing as what you were doing last week. The only difference is there happens to be an x with it. Okay. So that's what I'm going to need to do for that part of the problem. Now, for this one here, I've got denominators of 5 and 10. I know 5 and 10 both go into 10, so I'm going to change them to 10s. The 7 is going to stay because that fraction was already there. I multiplied this by 2, so I'm going to multiply that by 2, and I've got 18. Okay. So now what I've got, right, is 3/12x plus 8/12x. Oh, I can simplify that because they have a common denominator and they both have an x. That gives me 11/12x. And then these terms over here, 18 plus 7, give me 25/10. Okay, and I can simplify that then. This stays, this one's right, 11/12x. 25/10, if I divide them both by 5, it's going to give me 5/2. And that's my final answer. Okay, that's an expression. It doesn't look like an answer. It looks like it should be a problem, but you can't do anything with it because there's no equal, or because there's no equal sign. So this is the simplified expression of that. Now, if you look at this, this looks almost the same, except it has some negatives in it, okay? So I don't want you to freak out about this, all right? It's the same type of problem. So here we go, let's try this. So we're gonna chunk this, just like we did in the last question, okay? We're gonna rearrange it so that like terms are together. So negative 11 over 2x minus 11 over 4x. Remember, we're writing everything in the chunk. Minus 5 over 3 plus 4 over 9. Okay, so now I need to be able to combine those two terms. So I need a common denominator, okay? 2 and 4 both go into 4. So I'm going to keep this fraction the same, negative 11 over 4x. I'm going to turn that into a 4. So I multiplied this by 2. So I'm going to do the same thing to the numerator. Negative 11 times 2 is negative 22x. Okay, minus 11x. Now for these fractions over here, 3 and 9 both go into 9, so I can keep the 4/9 there. If I make this a 9, I multiplied this by 3, so I need to multiply the numerator by 3. This gives me negative 15. Okay, so now this really just comes down to, can you do your integers? This says negative 22 minus 11. So if I pull that off to the side here, negative 22 minus 11, that's a subtraction problem. We're going to keep change, or add the opposite. So negative 22 plus negative 11 is negative 33. So that means this is negative 33 over 4x. And you simplified that red part of the expression. Now we come over here, and this says negative 15 plus 4. Thinking about our adding rules, those have different signs, so we're going to subtract, okay? Different signs subtract, this is going to be negative 11 over 9. Now, you just did some really crazy looking questions, okay? Thinking about how that started out, this is something we're going to continue working on Wednesday, so I want you to understand that. But I want you to see the connection here. All you're doing is putting together your like terms, okay? And they just happen to have fractions in them. Okay, let's get to something that looks a little bit simpler. So this is something most of you are pretty good at. This is called distributive property. If there's a number on the outside of your parenthesis, what you need to do here, okay, we talked about this like passing out candy. We need to give everybody a piece of candy that's on the inside of those parentheses. Okay, if we give it to the 6x and not the 7, that's not fair. That 7 would be sad, okay? Now, the 5's on the outside of the parenthesis, which means it's being multiplied. So this really means 5 times 6x, and that 5's a positive, plus 5 times, now be really careful here, that's a negative 7. Okay, so this becomes 30x, 5 times 6x, and this positive 5 times negative 7, okay, using Mr. Multiple Division here, becomes negative 35. This is our simplified expression there. We can't put them together because this has an x and this doesn't, okay? But what we can do, all right, is get from the parentheses, we can get rid of the parentheses to come here. So you go ahead and pause this and try this one on your own. You should have taken that 2 and distributed it to both of these pieces. 2 times negative 3n plus 2 times positive 4. 2 times negative 3n is negative 6n using Mr. Multiple Division plus 8. Okay, that's all you need to do. Okay, this one here starts to look a little crazier because it has fractions. But the good news is we've been working on fractions and we've been working on multiplying fractions. So you guys can do this. You're going to take that number on the outside and you're going to distribute it to both parts. Okay, so this is where writing out your work becomes really important. This says 3/5 times 2/3 x. That's a positive 3/5, right? Plus, because it's a positive 3/5 times negative 3. Now, if you think about that negative 3, you could put a 1 underneath it, turn that into a fraction, so we'll go ahead and do that there. Okay? Now, this is just a fraction multiplying problem. Okay? Basically, 2 fraction multiplication problems. So when you multiply fractions, you think about what you did on Friday. Hopefully you did that work. Multiplying fractions, you can cross cancel. Okay? Those 3's to both turn to 1's. So this is going to be 2x over 5. 5 times 1 is there. 1 times 2 is on the numerator. Here, 3 and 1 can't cancel. 3 and 5 can't cancel. But I am going to have a positive times a negative, which is going to be a negative 9 over positive 5. And that's my solution. Okay. It looks ugly, and I understand that. But right now, what you're doing is you're distributing with fractions, which is pretty good. So let's try this. Okay. See if we can put some things back together here. So in this question here, there are like terms and there is distributive property. If you think about what we did in class, we always talked about distributing first. Okay. This -6 needs to be distributed here and here. Okay. That's going to give you a -12m. -6 times +2 is -12. Now be really careful here. -6 times -4 is a +24 plus 5m minus 20. This problem now looks like one we did at the beginning of class, at the beginning of this lesson. So we're going to chunk it, okay, and put together the chunks that match. -12m and +5m. I'm going to rewrite those so they're beside each other. Plus 24 minus 20. Now this just becomes an integer problem. You put together the right things. -12 plus 5. Those have different signs. So I'm going to subtract. It's 7. The 12 is bigger. It's negative. -7m. And then this says +24 minus 20, which we know is just positive. So that's the simplified expression for that problem. Okay. And last one. Go ahead and pause this. You guys try it. Okay, please do this. All right. So hopefully you've tried the problem. Okay. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at what we need to do first. And that first thing is always to distribute. Okay. We have to be careful here. We're distributing a -3 in this case. Okay. So that -17 stays. The +9k stays. -3 times 4k is -12k. -3 times -6 is +18. Okay. Once you're here, you're going to chunk. Most of you are pretty good at this chunking part in class. Make sure you don't forget that part. We're going to put our k's first. So we've got 9k minus 12k. Those matched. -17 and +18 match. Okay. Now we're just doing an integer problem. So this says 9k minus 12k. So 9 minus 12. Keep, change, change. +9, -12. It's going to give us a subtraction problem, which is 3, but it's negative because the 12 is bigger. Okay. And this is going to be -17 plus 18. Different signs again. You subtract, you get 1, but the 18 is bigger, so it's a positive. So if the fraction questions were the ones that you had a harder time with today, don't stress about that. The work that you're doing today really isn't that. There's one little fraction question that's not too hard. But what I need you to try today is to make sure that you're reviewing how to distribute and simplify expressions with integers. Okay? So your work today is on Canvas. Okay? There's 4 practice problems that are linked on Canvas for you to do. I also need you to go back to your mathfactspro.com and do another set of practice. Okay? The last question on your Canvas problem, so there's actually 5 problems, only 4 of them are practice. Okay? The last question on there is the score from your Canvas activity. Okay? And just as a couple of reminders, the April 13th, that was the Monday assignment from last week. That is due tonight at midnight. Okay, it's on Canvas. It was submitting your score from your MathFacts Pro the first time you did it. So please make sure you're doing that. Okay. You can check on Skyber to see if you're done or not also. Okay. And lastly, just as an update, the help sessions are going to be running on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays this week, not Tuesdays and Thursdays. There wasn't enough interest last week, and that's okay. But I just don't want to sit here and not use my time well. So if you need help Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the link is on Canvas. It's a Zoom meeting. So please open that up and hop in and ask your questions if you have them. So I hope you're all doing well, and be sure to reach out if you need anything. See you at the help session if you need help, and make sure you're getting your assignments done. So take care.